On behalf of the Building Supply Industry Association of BC and the BC Floor Covering Association, I'm pleased to present our keynote speaker. Today's topic is how to grow your business when you can't make sales calls. We can think of no one more qualified than our speaker, Mark Mitchell, consultant and author of the industry Bible, Building Materials, Channel Marketing. Mark has over 30 years experience increasing sales for over 100 building materials and flooring companies in commercial and residential, new construction, and repair and remodel. If you have a question for Mark, please enter them below and we'll address as many as possible during the Q&A. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be part of this and hopefully give you some insights that will help you all to be more successful. I'm now going to share my screen here, the presentation that I've prepared for us. So hopefully you all can see my slides here. So, our subject today is, I thought a great subject would be how to grow your business when you can't make sales calls. Many companies are reaching out to me today and asking for help and advice, on how to do this. So I thought it's would be quite topical. So my goals in my presentation are, one, to add to your knowledge. So you already are successful people, you know what you're doing. I want to just add to that. I also will want to challenge your beliefs, that we find many people are kind of set in their ways. They go by the status quo of what has always worked. And so I want to challenge your beliefs about some things to get you also to think and see your blind spots. And from there is the way that you will most effectively be able to grow your business, by adding to your knowledge, maybe challenging your beliefs about what it takes to make a sale or keep a customer, and to get you to think and see your blind spots. Now, today, you and your customers all of us are facing uncertainty, and your job in these we'll say challenging times are, to offer certainty in a sea of uncertainty. And so just having the customers back, more and more times people will say to building material dealers, builders, architects, contractors will say that the level of customer service continues to decline that they receive from suppliers, manufacturers. And so that they can't get information in a timely fashion. They maybe can't get accurate information. They can't get commitments. And so just being there, that somebody that they trust, like trust your word and what you will do, provides certainty to them in, like, the sea of uncertainty. And I also think right now, speaking at a bigger scale, there's never been a better time to grow your sales. Now, I don't know what's going on in Canada right now, but in the US, our remodeling business is just skyrocketed. There's not enough installers or labor, and some manufacturers can't keep up with the demand that they're having. As well as in new home construction, we're seeing builders are surprised how many people are shopping for homes. So there's a lot of activity going on, but a bigger picture thing is changes even before, if we took coronavirus out of the equation, that when we take a look at companies like Katerra or Integra, is that, they've really found a way and focused on reducing waste and inefficiency in construction. And that also leads to solving some of the labor shortage problems by producing buildings, homes and buildings off-site, or parts of them off-site. This is really exploding with growth, and it's mainly because the owner sees that they could get in the building quicker. And the question they're now asking, like Jerry McCoffey, the CEO of Integra, if a builder comes to him and says, "I'd like to talk to you about building, my homes," the first question Jerry asks is, "How much does it cost you for every extra day the home is not completed? And if you can't answer that question for me, I can't help you." And so it's the whole thing is changing because of this. So we're going to see across everywhere, we're just going to see a drive toward reducing waste and inefficiency. And so if you're thinking about how your product can help reduce waste and inefficiency, you're going to find that's going to be becoming more important to your customers. They're going to hear that message. The other thing that's helping us is, the building material industry is kind of a, it's like 10 years behind the rest of the world many times, and is very stubborn and slow to change, difficult to introduce new materials, new products. And I remember back when I first started my career in building materials, I remember when, here's this DuPont company with this paper wrap you're supposed to put around your house. And builders are looking like, why do I need that? The way I've been building is just fine. There's no reason for this. It probably took, DuPont 20 years to get, change building codes, get their product accepted, and get it used. Then along comes James Hardie from Australia with this crazy product called fiber cement siding. And I remember all the vinyl companies laughed at it like, this is never going to succeed. There's so many problems with it. And, James Hardie, like in 10 years, captured a huge share of the market at the expense of vinyl. And then along comes a company called Huber Engineered Woods, and they answer the builder's need, once again, for reducing waste and inefficiency. So they literally combined, we'll say, house wrap with OSB sheathing board. So now the builder looks and says, I only have to go around the house one time. I don't have to have one labor install sheathing, a second labor put on house wrap on top of it that I hope he does correctly, and I hope the wind doesn't blow it off before we get the siding on. And it literally took them 4 years. I don't know about in Canada, but if I go anywhere in the United States and I see things under construction, I'm likely to see this green color for the sheathing on the commercial or residential project. So the pace of change is also helping. So now people are more open to new ideas, new products, new ways of doing business. Now, this is how I see the world. Like when I'm working with somebody and they're in the commercial building materials, my mind literally looks at this graphic that I designed years ago and look and identify, okay, it helps me to identify who are the influencers and who are the decision makers and who are we forgetting, as I look at when I take on a project. And the same thing in the residential market. And whether, it's like selling to a big box or through a one-step distributor, two-step distributor, the role of the contractor, the role of the builder. And so these really guide me to make sure that I haven't overlooked somebody. Because many times I find where we can sell a builder on a new product, the builder wants it, and then only to find out that his contractor doesn't want to install it or doesn't want to use it. And so we didn't get the contractor on our side beforehand. We just went to the builders figuring that he's the boss and he'll tell the contractor what to do. But with today's labor shortages today, the builder's very, very, he wants to view his contract relationships as partnerships, not you work for me and I'm going to tell you what to do. Because the guy will just say, I walk down the street, I've got plenty of business. I don't need yours if you're going to be difficult to work with. So many times it's that figuring out the best way in the door and the order of people to get on your side. And we're recording this, so you'll have a copy of the recording, but I'm also going to send Susan a PDF copy of all my slides. So in case you want to use any of them or refer back to them, so you'll have that. So there's two ways to grow. First one is current customers, and the second one is new customers. And so we're going to start talk about current customers. So I also view there's two kinds of companies. One, companies that focus on current customers. I'll talk to their sales reps and they spend every day on spending time with their current best customers, okay? And the idea of going out and getting a new customer is not something that they're particularly interested in. And then you have companies that focus too much on new customers at the expense of current customers. So I'll see a certain company that maybe, they want to grow 6%, but every year they lose 2% of their current customers. So now you're really going to have to grow 8% to hit your 6%. So, it's much easier to keep a current customer than it is to gain a new customer, but it takes a balance of, and however your company's working, that's fine. My observation of working with many companies is they find it difficult to have a correct balance between business development of getting new customers and, let's say, account management of keeping current customers happy. So the way to keep current customers, one, is to don't take them for granted. It's amazing how many building material companies take their existing customers for granted. Not their largest customers. They pamper them with all kinds of attention and so forth. But the medium to smaller size customers, that they tend to take them for granted. And so the way to keep them, is to literally go out and ask them, what could you do better? Like, even if they love you, there's something you could do better. Like, I like to think that my wife loves me, but if you sat down with her and gave her a legal pad, she could fill it up with all the things she wished I did differently. And so if you don't assume you know what they want, ask them what you could do better. And the next most important thing here that I've learned is to know more about their business than your competitors. So if your customer is a lumber dealer, let's say, then you want to know more about the lumber dealer business and this particular customer, how their approach to the lumber dealer business, than your competitors. It's amazing how powerful this is. Many contractors, architects, builders, and so forth will tell me that they get called on by salespeople who know their products but have no idea how a house is built, or just how their business operates. They just are focused on, I got my sales message down, I know my product, I'm going to go in and pound it over, sell it to this builder. And the builders, literally, they tell me that 50% of the time when they get a sales call, they need to meet with salespeople. They want to meet with salespeople to keep current on things. But 50% of the time, they find it's a waste of time because the salesperson, while having product knowledge, has no knowledge about their business and what it takes for them to successfully use your product. So I had a client that's in the molding business, and their sales rep, one of their sales reps called me and he said, Mark, next Wednesday, I'm meeting with the Michigan State Lumber Dealers Association, and I'm going to get 15 minutes at a table with 12 lumber dealers because I paid $350 to be a sponsor or something. What do I do with that 15 minutes? And so I said, don't talk about your product or company. I sent him a list of topical questions that lumber dealers would be interested in, such as, wow, how do you compete with big boxes? Okay. How do you meet the ever increasing demands of builders who now want, maybe deliveries twice a day, or whatever other things they keep asking you to do more, but they don't want to pay more. I gave them a list of 6 questions to ask them. And that afternoon, he called me back and said, he said, Mark, it was amazing. He said, I had to leave after 90 minutes because I had another engagement. The builders wanted to keep talking just because I started this process. Now, there were 15 builders there. 3 of them were current customers of this molding manufacturer. 12 were not. 3 of those 12 handed their business cards to the sales rep saying, anybody that understands our business this well, we should be doing business with. So I want to talk to you. So that says that their competitor that they're with, the sales rep, really has no idea how a lumber dealer, what their daily struggles are, and how to ease that up. So you can grow current customers in 2 ways. One, if they carry you and some competitors, and maybe you have 30% you think of their business, well, you can gain a larger percentage of their business is one way to grow. The other way to grow is to sit down with them and say, what are your plans for 2021? And how can we help you achieve those? And they're usually, there's something, they're facing a challenge, they're facing a competitor, maybe they're trying to enter a new market, get new customers. And so, if you sit down with them like a business planning meeting and have them lay out I would literally say, how did 2020 go for you? And what are your plans for 2021? And then to look at, ask them, how can we help you? But also to think of other ways that maybe the customer hasn't thought of ways that you can help them to grow the sales of your product. An example is many times lumber dealers are not great salespeople. And so they struggle with going out and calling on a new builder, a builder they don't have, but they'd love to have. And so sometimes maybe you as a salesperson can make a better pitch for them than they can. And you can do a joint call or something like that. But I think that, there's two ways to grow them. One, get a larger percentage of their current business. And secondly, help them grow the sales of your product. Now, how to gain new customers. Now, this is much tougher than keeping a current customer happy, because new customers, building material companies frequently make a mistake of thinking it's all about the product. The customer's looking for a better product, and the customer most of the time is not looking for a better product. Even if they think yours is better, the one they're using today is good enough. Maybe they're not getting any complaints or having any problems. But what they're really looking for is they're looking for how to make their business more successful. And so if buying your product or buying from your company will help make them more successful, or it solves a problem for them, that's the language they want to talk about. The next part of how to gain new customers is back to this knowledge piece. So know more about, if it's the flooring retailer business or the lumber dealer business, know more than your competitors about their business. Be able to talk intelligently about it. Read their trade magazines. Ask them questions like, I just read this article. Is this affecting you, or what do you think about this? Those are the types of discussions they love to have. Now, the next part is to identify, let's say they have a current supplier that's your competitor. Okay. Once again, identify what frustrates them when dealing with their current supplier. Much like I said, to ask your current customers, what could you do better? There's something about their current supplier, no matter how loyal they are, how much they love them, there's something that frustrates them, or they wish that it would be different. And it's something maybe you could go, oh, we could easily do that. And so if a supplier could do this for you, like I met with a large landscaping distributor a few months ago, and he told me how one of his largest vendors he buys from decided that they are going to stop acknowledging orders. And so he has, this was the director of purchasing. And so he's trying to turn his inventory, and he's measured on his performance of, how well he manages and turns the inventory. So when he has an order coming in on Tuesday every week, he needs to know that, one, yes, we've got your order. Yes, we're going to fulfill the order. Yes, it'll be 100% complete, or these items will be back ordered. And now the problem is where, instead of the manufacturer telling him this information, he or his assistant have to take time every week to call the manufacturer, make sure they got the order, make sure it's going to ship on the right date, and make sure it's 100% complete, because he can't afford to not have a part that a landscaping contractor might need. He'll have to go find them somewhere else just to make sure that he has them. And so it's surprising how, companies that we think are really good and successful, they sometimes do stupid, short-sighted things that they don't realize the pain they're causing their customer. And the next part is to, back to this idea about they want to solve a problem or be more successful. So don't think about you're selling them a product. Think about you're presenting them with a business proposition of how they're going to be more successful or solve a problem, or both, by doing business with you. And then if your product's better, that's icing on the cake. But that is usually not the primary reason somebody's going to switch products. Now, another thing that I've learned over the years is the idea of switching to you, let's say, or starting to buy from you, starting to use your product. It starts with a single person who has an idea. who sees this would be good for the company. Now, normally, sometimes it's like, it's the owner and he can just say yes, but many times you got one person in there that thinks this is a good idea. And it's kind of like, I view them as your champion. Like they are going to have to go in to sell different people on the idea and overcome resistance that they would get. And so one of the things I found really important is to find out what's in this for them personally. Not just people don't just make business decisions, they make personal decisions. So so anytime I change something, there's a risk that it won't go well, and I could be blamed for that, right? Um, but there's something motivating that person to be interested in your company or product, right? Is he think that he's going to will help him get a promotion, help him, the boss will think better of him, whatever it is, there's something that's personally motivating him. I did a project for a large automatic door company 2 years ago, and they'd gone in and were talking to the facilities managers of the largest retailers in North America, like Walmart, Home Depot, and so forth. And they were finding that they had this product they thought was the greatest thing in the world, and they presented it and didn't get any sales, no interest at all. And then, so they said, Mark, will you help us figure out what's going wrong here? And so they were presenting it as a software solution that would have a learning curve and be able to print out all kinds of charts and graphs and so forth, and enable somebody to make better decisions, right? And that no one was like going, oh, what I need another piece of software I have to learn how to use, right? No interest in it. Even when they tried to give it to them for free, there's still no interest. So I went and interviewed a number of these facilities managers, and I found out that they personally are kind of viewed as, glorified janitors. Okay. Like if there's a broken window, call Herb to fix it. If there's graffiti on the wall, call Herb. If the doors won't lock, call Herb. So they're always putting out fires, but they're never viewed at the same level as other executives. And so when we change the message that this software will enable you to, let's say, basically gain more respect from your boss, they couldn't wait to start using it. Okay, because they just felt like they feel unappreciated or undervalued, and so all of a sudden when they looked at it differently, that I'm going to start to look smarter to my boss because of how I can show him how I use this. All of a sudden they couldn't wait to sign up for it. Same product, same thing, just a different one, identifying that champion and then realizing what's their personal motivation for doing this. So he's taking a risk, he or she is taking a risk anytime they make a change. So you want to make sure to do everything you can to make them look like a hero. So that first order has to arrive on time, everything about it, make them look like a hero. This same molding company that I was working with, we identified in the United States lumber dealers that could buy $1 million a year of molding from them who were not customers of theirs. And we took them like 5 dealers at a time, and we targeted them and put together a very focused campaign to convert these people. And each one literally got their own custom sales presentation based on who they were in their marketplace. If they tended to do more do-it-yourself business, they wanted to grow builders, they have a showroom, whatever the factors were. But we then on the first order, we told the drivers that delivering on the first order, we didn't tell them exactly what to do, but we said, do something special on the first time you're delivering to a new customer. And so one of the drivers just decided, we didn't say, here, give people ball caps. We left it up to them. And one driver stopped and bought a dozen donuts. And he pulls up to the loading dock at the lumber dealer and introduces himself, hands the guys the box of donuts, and then unloads the truck. Well, this lumber dealer, I think, has 8 locations in Southern Illinois. And that afternoon, the president of the lumber dealer called the president of the molding company. They did not know each other. And just to say that dropping off the donuts reinforced that they made the right decision to go with this new company. And so when you get somebody to buy your product, there's a whole bunch of other people there that like the old supplier. like they, maybe they coach little league together or they go fishing or something. But there are, if there's one person that's for you, there's a number of other people that wish things didn't change. Okay. And so you need to, they're looking for you to screw up on the beginning. So then they can point out how the old supplier didn't do that. So you need to kind of go overboard to win over more of those people, as well as to support the champion that got you in the door in the first place. Now, this is a thing that people frequently also overlook. They're looking at literally, well, switching to my product is like switching brands of toothpaste. Okay, and it's not. So like when a builder changes faucets, let's say, or changes flooring, changes anything that the home buyer can see, there's literally 17 different things that purchasing person has to do in order to make that switch. So it's like our displays in our model homes, our computer ordering system, what our website says, so it's just this whole list of administrative things as well as sales and marketing things that need to be changed. And I've seen so many times when the builder looked at this and really wanted to do it, but then said, gee, kind of as he's weighing a scale, okay, here's the benefits of this, but here's the cost and risk, and they're looking like that. I had one client who sold a builder. The builder was ready to go, but the builder said, hey, I want to buy from you, but I can't do it for 90 days. And he's like, why not? He says, well, the person that inputs everything in our computer system, she's backed up 3 months. So we can't take her any new tasks to do or anything. And so the salesperson said, well, if I paid her to come in on a Saturday and do this, do you think, we could make it happen? So the purchasing person walks down the hall to the computer woman and I think it was like $150 or something like that, and came back and said, yeah, she'll do it. We can make the sale happen. So, so many times there's like so many different variables going on behind the scenes that you need to kind of probe to find out what is going on. It's just not as simple as my product is better. And then the other one along those same lines is I'm not a big fan of going in by we're cheaper, because that customer will then also easily leave you when somebody comes in with the next lowest price, where a customer that's not buying you based on the lowest price but a competitive price, you got a better chance of them being loyal to you. And then the other thing that I see is people give up too soon when pursuing a big customer. So it's like, be patient and don't give up. The best customers can take months or even years to sell. So a friend of mine who recently retired, she was the director of national accounts for DuPont Tyvek. So her job was the top 20 builders, right? To go into those 20 builders and say, I know you're using this house wrap. Ours is only 20% more, but here's why you should use it. Okay. And I mean, I saw like one of the biggest home builders, she converted them, but it literally took her over 2 years to do it, but she didn't give up. She got to know them every time, every interaction. She learned more about them, more about their issues, their goals. How would converting to Tyvek help them achieve those? And she just stayed at it, and so it's too many people give up too soon. The next thing here is I want to talk about communicating today. So you need to communicate with customers the way they want to communicate. So there are some people who still prefer face-to-face meetings. There's some people who prefer phone calls. There's some people prefer email. There's some people who prefer text, even social media or Zoom. And so you need to identify the best way to communicate with your prospects and your customers. And so, for example, I get 3 inquiries per week on average of companies want to talk to me about working with me. And one of those comes from LinkedIn. Okay. Somebody, I don't know them. they found me, and they wanted to, their first communication wasn't a phone call, wasn't an email, wasn't a form on my website, but was a message in LinkedIn. And and I'm like, wow. I also discovered that, I, let's say, have the, I know the VP of marketing for a large building material company, and they're in the roofing business. And I'm going to go to the roofing convention, and I'd like to see if he could meet with me. If I have, we know each other. I have his cell phone number, his office number, his personal email, and his business email. Now, I found I could use any of those things and may not hear back from him. But I found in his case, if I go to LinkedIn and send him a message, within an hour, he's like, "Oh, Mark, yeah, Wednesday afternoon, let's get together." He'll be right back to me. That's the best way to communicate with him. I have another client who's like, "Mark, if you need to talk to me, just pick up the phone and call me. I'll either answer the phone or I'll call you back." He's going, "Don't send me an email." And then I even have one client, I don't understand really Twitter, but unless I guess you're Paris Hilton or Donald Trump. But I have one client that the surest way I can communicate with him, get his attention, is on Twitter. And he's just on there a lot, and he's in the wood processing business. And so I'm learning each of these, looking at each one and saying, okay, this is how they want to be communicated with. So you need to be able to adapt to the way they want to communicate, because they're going to be more responsive to you, and as opposed to leaving voicemails or sending emails that you don't get back or hear a return. If you see people either using social media as a way, like I view that LinkedIn, some of these people, like the VP of marketing, they literally say, "I'm giving up on my inbox. It's so out of control. So now I'm going to have a little screen that if I know somebody on LinkedIn, I'm more likely to respond to them." They kind of rise to the top, but not everybody is into that. But there's a growing percentage of people that do things in different ways. Some companies will use, a communication app like Slack or something like that. So when I work with some clients, they're going, "Okay, Mark, here's this app. We need you to sign up for it, and this is how to communicate with us." So I just need to be adaptable in how to work with them. So coronavirus has changed the way customers do business. Now, they've always been overworked and understaffed, and now with higher demand for many of their products, they didn't add any more people. So they've come to realize from working at home, particularly, that time is their most valuable resource. The larger the company, the more meetings they have, and the attendees realize that there's not much value in attending the meeting, but you kind of feel like you have to. So they're kind of waking up to, how do I make the best use of my limited time? How can I make decisions quicker and easier? And I also find that younger people prefer newer ways of communicating. So I had a client last fall that contacted me and said, "Mark, I've got 20 salespeople. 10 of them are older and 10 of them are younger. The older ones don't understand anything. Telephone, email, and meetings is all they understand. The younger people can't see the wisdom of a phone call or a meeting," and they even question email. And so it's like, how do we get them to share their knowledge? How can the older people teach the younger people, how to do things, and the younger people teach the older people? So I think it's a challenge that the building material industry faces. Now, I want to, just another thing I want to, leading up to, let's say, how to turn cold prospects into what I call warm prospects. So let's say that the value of a sale is $100, okay? I mean, or 10,000 or 100,000, whatever or $1 million, whatever you think that customer is worth, but we're just going to say it's $100. So if we go back to this thing of, it's going to take a minimum of 5 sales contacts probably to convert them. Okay, so that would be, a $20 effort. Like a personal sales call on somebody is a $20 effort. Meeting them at an event, we say, is a $20 effort. And so it could be, sales calls, website visits, events, even an effective email. We'll say, that the salesperson had to take time to write the email, so forth. and it gets opened, we could say that's, it's one of those 5 contacts we need to make. So it's worth $20. Now, what I've started to notice is I've experienced this myself, but also a number of building material sales representatives for a variety of companies. I've been watching how I call it it's like they literally have a piggy bank, and they're adding every day, they're putting some pennies, quarters, nickels, dimes into the piggy bank. And eventually those turn into a $20 bill. Okay. And what I'm talking about is, this is an example of 2 people. In the top right is Mike Kenoff from Fox Blocks. They make insulated concrete forms. And then Jim Groliu is the New England representative to an extremely high-end window company that I think is based in Quebec. Okay. Now, so Jim, here he is, has all of New England, big cities, Boston, small cities in New Hampshire and Maine and so forth. He has that whole market to go and find residential architects and high-end custom home builders. Those are his customers. And so one of the things he's learned is, okay, I identified there's a builder that I didn't know existed. There's a builder that I think should be using our windows based on that probably he has a thing that probably says if your new home doesn't cost $2 million, you can't afford our windows. So he's got a very select group of people. But rather than just going up and knocking on the door and asking for a meeting with a builder, the first thing or residential architect, the first thing he does is find their company on LinkedIn, and then he pushes the follow button. And then he goes and looks at the employees and figures out who are the key employees that it may be one person or maybe 2 or 3, but these are the people that I need to interact with. So then he sends them a connection request. As we're both in the whatever high-end residential building market, I'd like to connect with you. Just something as simple as that. Give them a little reason why they should connect with you. And so he gets maybe 80% of the people will connect with him. So now every day he spends a little time going to LinkedIn and he's looking, did this builder, either as an individual or a company, did they post something like, here's the new home we just completed? Okay. It doesn't have Jim's windows in it, but Jim will either like it, or he may say, wow, that is really impressive. What a beautiful home. Just some comment like that. Or he may even, if he's really impressed, he might even share it. So these builders and architects today are very social media savvy. So they're monitoring, how many followers, likes, all those kinds of things. And so when a new person shows up and starts to like or comment on things, they take notice. Oh, this Jim guy, he said a nice thing about our home. Oh, he's in the window business. Okay. And he gives it maybe, he might give it like 6 weeks. And then he will then say, hey, could I stop by and talk to you? And the guy's like, it's like they already know each other, but they've never met before. Person feels, warm toward that. And the same thing with Mike at Fox Blocks. He does a very similar tactic of using LinkedIn particularly to do this. I also have a similar experience myself where a little secret here, I cheat. I have a virtual assistant, and every day she goes on my LinkedIn account, and if it's your birthday, if you got a promotion, some other nice thing happened to you, she's going to say happy birthday or congratulations or something from me. And over half of them come back and say, thanks, Mark, how are you doing? Gee, I want to catch up with you, or whatever. But it's amazing how just little bits of attention, making somebody feel special, goes a long way. And I think back to Jim Grolier, what he's doing is making the builder feel, oh, Jim admires my work, so Jim must be a cool guy. It's just that simple. So, and using LinkedIn, to warm up cold calls, one is improve your profile page. Have a good picture of yourself, and then look at the copy, how you're describing yourself. Too many people on LinkedIn, it's like they're writing a resume for their next job. They talk about how many dollars they're in charge of, or raising profit margins, or all this kind of stuff. Rewrite all that crap that makes it look like, you are, an expert in, high-end custom windows or whatever you are. And so that write that for the prospect or customer, not for your next boss. Okay? Next thing then is if you haven't done this already, it's just literally every single person in the business, connect with them, okay? And any new connections that you make. When I get home, every day, if I get an email from a new person or I meet somebody at a trade show, that night I'm sending them a connection request on LinkedIn. Then as Jim and Mike do, I would send connection requests to new prospects, companies that you want to do business with, you're not doing business with today. And then start to like, share, or comment on the post of these prospects, as well as your current customers. And you'll see, I have a client, I got 2 minutes, I got to talk fast here. But anyway, trust me, builders, architects, people like that are watching their social media performance and watching who is saying what. And so you can, even if they're not using your product today, you can say something nice about them. It will get noticed. So the other thing about LinkedIn is, an individual, you can join groups, a company cannot. And you can find groups for literally any type of specialty that you want. This is just an example. Here's a quick example of a woman who sells high-end air barriers in Texas. And I led them through how to do this. And she sent me this thing. I posted a short article on LinkedIn featuring a local project and mentioned a local architect. A contractor who's never used this before emailed me. I replied to the email, visit him the next day to drop off materials. He's now bidding on a project that I had no idea about using our products. So just that, just like there's an example. This is really, this isn't something. Oh, so this is the last thing I want to share with you, is also be a source of knowledge. So if, like, this is an example where I was working with Masonite commercial doors, and hotels are a really big prospect for them. And so I found this article about how the millennial generation is imposing its will on design of hotels. And so I sent this to all of the Masonite reps. I said, send this to all your architect customers, right? And like a week later, I just heard back all these, like, oh my God, Mark, I got all this response. Thank you for sharing this. This is a very helpful article. We do a lot of hotel projects, and I didn't see this article. So something just as simple as finding something that would be of interest. Don't assume they've read it. It's like, be a little curator of sending them information, and it continues to raise the bar of what they think of you as an expert who understands them. So I just in closing, you can feel free to go to my website there. There's a weekly newsletter you can sign up, or there's over 500 articles you can access for free about probably any subject in building materials. I have a podcast, YouTube, or connect with me on LinkedIn. So with that, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Mark. And I also just want to say thank you. While people are thinking of the questions they want to ask, I just want to thank you for being willing to share your slides. We'll definitely be sharing those with our members. And I also wanted to answer your question that, yes, the building supply business is high in demand in Canada as well. And you also, your insights into sales psychology is absolutely excellent. I can see those powerful perspectives helping our members too. Okay, so I will just look in the chat and see if we have any questions. Okay, so Amandeep, he's saying that it's well explained, really great and powerful information shared. Thanks a lot for sharing, and he really appreciated it. So you're getting some nice, nice accolades. That's very nice. Thank you.
Also, if in the coming days, if somebody has a question, they can just email me with your question, and I'll do my best to answer it.
Oh, here we go. Okay, we have a few coming in now. So thank you for your patience. Okay, so next question. This is Rajiv, He's asking, when should a local company take on a greater vision of going national or going global? Is the financial goal the right way to go ahead?
Well, I mean, I think you always should be looking for growth because you're either growing or dying. You don't stay still, and even you may be thinking that you're growing, but maybe some competitors are growing faster than you, and you don't realize you're losing market share. Um, and so, I think the biggest thing about your ambitions when I start to say, okay, we're a local company. How do you become a regional company? Just what's the next step? So is there a market 50 miles away that we could have a presence in, depending on what your product is? But when you start to say national and global, that worries, or the thing that comes to my mind is money. Okay, so do you have access to enough money to make that happen? Because growth costs cash. And so you don't want to outgrow your ability to fund the operation, and you don't want to outgrow your ability to staff the operation so that you maintain a high level of customer service.
Thank you.
So,
Good point. Okay, next question. We have a question from Tom. He's asking, do you have any advice on how to walk the line between staying in contact over months or maybe even a years long sales cycle without becoming a pest?
the easiest way to do that is to be, sharing information and insights with them. Like I tell people, if you're going to regularly post on LinkedIn, that you should maybe have a ratio of 4 non-selling posts that are just informational and helpful advice or something, or sharing an article or story, and then one time you're selling your product. And so I think that if he looks at that ratio of the contacts of like, hey, I saw this article or this new piece of information that I thought would be helpful to you, that it's not like, and when are you going to start buying our product? You don't have that. So, and the other thing is everybody in the audience is an expert and a thought leader. You may not think of yourself that way, but you know things about your business, your customer's business, your products, and you see mistakes, for example, being what are the 5 most common mistakes a flooring retailer makes. Many of you know that. What are the 5 most common mistakes a lumber dealer makes? And just sharing some of those insights, is a way that further does your expertise. So I guess Tom, what I would say is think about 4 communications that are helpful, sharing an article, asking them a question, like I was reading about, this is affecting your type of business. How is this affecting you? It's like anything but asking for the order or presenting your product, and you just keep that ratio. And then it's okay to, I'll say 1 time out of 5, you maybe are talking about doing business.
Fantastic. Fantastic. 80% as in helpful, positive information, and only 20% as in promotion. So that's great. Okay, so the next question we have is from Amandeep. Working with prospects, making them a client, generating leads, what's the best way to maintain time and revenue generation for the company while being in the process, especially for new customers and expanding the business?
Well, every company, the leadership of each company needs to say, there's a cost to developing new business, in terms of manpower or time allotted. And I just had a conversation with a client of mine yesterday, in which I pointed out that there was an opportunity they have right now because their competitor has managed to upset many of their contractor customers. And, so we outlined a plan of where's 12 markets where they would need a contractor. They'd like to have a contractor in these 12 markets that they don't have coverage right now. And this current contractor buys from the competitor that is having trouble with their contractors, right? So we identified, we're going to take 1 sales rep, and it's going to be his job to go and communicate with those 12 customers. And they agreed to sit down with that rep and say, look, any lost, don't worry about your compensation, okay? Because we think it's going to take 6 weeks for him to do this. During this 6 weeks, you're not going to be able to fully cover your market as well as you're normally doing. So you may see a little downturn in sales, and that's okay. We will compensate you for that. So now that's a special situation, but normally I like to see, whether you're using, however you measure things, but, pick a ratio. It's like, okay, I expect you to spend 1 day a week on business development, or 8 hours out of your week on business development. How are you going to do that? Okay. Or it's a half a day, or it's 2 days, but there's some ratio there. And then I also find, some companies, there's people who are better hunters than, I'll call it, farmers. And so it's like, so if you've got a person that really is great at closing new deals, make that their job. And then as soon as they land a new customer, it's turned over to somebody who knows how to manage an account and stay on top of them. So that's another way that I see, that many times we see all salespeople as being the same, and they're not. Different people have different skill sets.
Fantastic. Your insights are incredible. And I just got the response here that Amandeep was saying that thank you for answering. It's very helpful. So with that, I see no further questions. Thank you for your time, Mark. Thank you everyone for joining us. And we will see you next time from the BSIA and the BCFCA. Bye for now, everybody.
Bye now.